And when I learn about, so Latin cultures, we are polychronic, we have multiple conversations and topics at the same time. You know, Northern Europeans are monochronic, and and they're very linear in their communication, they're turn takers, all these things that now I study way later on in life. It's like I'm connecting them back to all these moments, these nuggets of memory that I have, that I was learning about without knowing. Actually, these things have names. People have studied this.
What do you think that is? Because sometimes in the past, and I want to divert just slightly,
So I
I,
can diverge very
I,
easily.
re I remember hearing that the difference between Anglo-Saxon cultures or countries that were colonized by England and so on, and the difference in development of countries that were colonized by Spain. So is there a thread here, or is there a commonality? Is there something that you have noticed? One topic, one conversation with, Anglo-Saxons or what you mentioned before in Europeans, and then we have to shout to be heard
Look, I think that yes,
in
there is a
Latin
lot of
America.
yeah, there's a lot of research on this. I think Northern European cultures are very different to the Southern European cultures.
True, true.
So
The
South
way.
America was mainly colonized by Spanish, right?
Mhm.
And then there was waves of Italians later on, like you mentioned,
Mhm.
some Lebanese later on. But the
Mm.
process of colonization in South America was also different to the process of colonization in Australia or New Zealand. And
Mm.
of course, very different to what happened in Africa. So I think those historic processes influence the way it shaped our cultures, right? So if you think of Argentina or Venezuela, think of Venezuela or Peru, there was a very strong indigenous culture already established there.
Mhm.
And then the Spanish came, and then they merged and they influenced, yeah, exactly. Everything that happened there shaped who we are today.
Mm.
And of course, it's different again if you think South America, Latin America is so big, but Mexicans are very different to Argentinians. Why? Because not only the history of our original aboriginals in our lands, the colonization process, but also the weather. It's not
Sure.
the same coming from a very cold Nordic country or the Patagonia than
Mhm.
to come from the Caribbean. The way people live together is
Mm.
different, right?
Absolutely.
How long do you spend in your house versus outdoors? How
Mm.
much do you hang out with your neighbors versus inside with a warm fire,
Mm.
with snow outside. So all these things influence the way each cultural group communicates
Sure. So
and how
amazing.
we deal in conflict. You say we have to shout. Also, it's very interesting. Australia is a country that was colonized by England, but it's also a huge country with very few people, right?
We
So
are.
it's vast. There's space everywhere. Like I always say, sometimes we talk to Asian students and say, oh, you have to work really hard to stand out in among millions and millions. In Australia, there's only like 28 millions and a huge country full of resources. So you don't need to shout. There's extra, right? So I think there's a lot of things. There's a lot of layers. It has to do with the history. It has to do with the environment that the culture grows in. It has to do with the weather. It has to do with another important thing. Are we exposed to natural disasters or not? And the other thing that you mentioned, kind of mentioned, but didn't mention, is religion. The Catholic ethics is different to the Protestant ethics, or the Buddhist or the Hindi or so, and that has permeated into Latin American culture through the Spanish,
Yes.
right? So religion plays a huge role in our cultures as well. And I think what's interesting is I always love thinking about the locus of control. I don't know if you have heard about that, but
Mhm.
who do we blame when things are not working, right? Who do we blame? And in Latin America, we tend to blame others.
Yes.
Blame the government, the politicians, the weather, God, La Virgen Maria. We ask the saints to help us, right? Whether Australia, in that sense, is more like you say, Anglo-Saxon influence for more Protestant way of seeing life, is more internal locus of control. Life is what you make of it. It's your responsibility. If you do well at school, it's because you worked hard. It's not because that day wasn't hot, or because your dad is a doctor, or any other thing, or because God was in a good mood that day, right? It's you. It's you. And I think that's maybe connected to what you like thinking about women, migrant women in Australia, and how we approach life and our challenges here, right?
Mm,
Because I think it is about taking control of what we can do here. And
absolutely.
our culture hasn't taught us that.
No, no, no. We learned the hard way, and that's what we find as well. As I find myself as a coach, uh, all these blueprints and mindsets that Latin American professionals bring. But I wanna ask you from your perspective, what are some of the patterns or mindsets that you see among Latin American uh, women or Latin Americans in Australia, because this is where we are today. And when it comes to career growth and leadership, what do you think from your perspective?
Look, I think there is in the last few years, especially after COVID, I've noticed like there's a huge growth in the Latin community here in Australia in terms of amazing women doing amazing things. And it's mainly women. I'm sorry, guys.